What if everything you've been taught about good and evil is a lie? What if morality isn't some timeless truth handed down from the heavens, but a clever invention by the weak to control the strong? Sounds radical, right? Well, that's exactly what Friedrich Nietzsche argued in his explosive book, On the Genealogy of Morals. In just 10 minutes, we're going to break down Nietzsche's groundbreaking critique of morality, why he believed our values are shaped by power struggles, not divine truth, and why his ideas are still shockingly relevant today. So, buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride through one of the most provocative minds in philosophy. Let's dive in. To understand Nietzsche, let's start with a simple question. Where do morals come from? Most people assume they're universal truths handed down by gods or reason, but Nietzsche flips the script. He argues that morality isn't divine, it's human-made, and it didn't arise out of some noble quest for justice. Instead, it grew out of power struggles between different groups of people. Think about it like this. Imagine two ancient societies clashing, the strong, dominant rulers versus the oppressed underclass. According to Nietzsche, these clashes gave rise to two very different kinds of morality, master morality and slave morality. Let's dig into those now. First up, master morality. This type of morality comes from the ruling class, the warriors, kings, and aristocrats. For them, being good meant embodying qualities like strength, courage, and pride. If you were noble and powerful, you were automatically good. On the flip side, anything weak, cowardly, or common was considered bad. It's all about celebrating excellence and dominance. But then there's slave morality, which emerges from the oppressed. These are the people at the bottom, the slaves, peasants, and anyone else crushed under the boot of the ruling class. They couldn't compete with the masters physically, so they turned their resentment inward. Instead of saying, "We're bad because we're weak," they flipped the script. They said, "No, you're bad because you're cruel and oppressive." This is where the concept of evil comes from. Evil wasn't just bad anymore, it became a weapon. The slaves used it to demonize the masters. Over time, this slave morality spread through religions like Christianity, which preached humility, meekness, and pity as virtues. Nietzsche calls this a slave revolt in morality. What started as an act of rebellion ended up reshaping entire civilizations. Now let's move on to Essay 2, where Nietzsche explores guilt and something called bad conscience. Have you ever felt guilty after doing something wrong? That feeling didn't always exist. Nietzsche traces its origins back to early human societies. In primitive times, guilt was tied to debt. If you owed someone something, a favor, money, or even respect, you had an obligation to repay it. Over time, this idea expanded beyond individuals to include debts owed to communities, ancestors, and eventually, gods. Religion played a huge role here, turning guilt into a spiritual burden. Think about it. If you believe you owe your soul to God, every little sin feels like a betrayal. But Nietzsche also talks about bad conscience, which happens when humans internalize aggression. As society became more structured, people couldn't lash out violently whenever they felt angry or frustrated. Instead, they turned that energy inward, creating a sense of self-loathing. This is especially true in religious contexts, where practices like fasting, self-flagellation, and confession became ways to punish yourself for your sins. And here's another twist. Nietzsche links all of this to the rise of the state. Before organized governments, disputes were settled through personal vendettas. But as states formed, they took control of violence, replacing chaotic revenge cycles with laws and punishments. This shift helped create modern notions of justice, but it also reinforced feelings of guilt and shame. Finally, let's talk about Essay 3, where Nietzsche tackles ascetic ideals. You've probably heard of monks, priests, or other figures who renounce worldly pleasures in favour of spiritual purity. Nietzsche calls these people ascetic priests, and he has some harsh words for them. On the surface, asceticism seems like a rejection of power. Monks give up wealth, sex, and luxury. They appear humble and selfless. But Nietzsche says this is deceptive. In reality, ascetic priests redirect power inward. By convincing others to embrace suffering, they gain immense influence over minds and souls. Christianity, for example, teaches that salvation comes through pain and sacrifice. This creates a kind of psychological domination. At the heart of all this is Nietzsche's famous concept of the will to power. Contrary to popular belief, the will to power isn't just about dominating others. It's about growth, creativity, and asserting yourself against obstacles. Even ascetic priests, who seem to reject life, are driven by a hidden will to power. They want to shape how others think and live. Nietzsche's critique here is pretty scathing. He sees ascetic ideals as life-denying, encouraging people to suppress their instincts and desires. But he also recognises their brilliance. They tap into deep human needs, offering meaning and purpose in a chaotic world. So far, we've covered a lot of ground, but let's zoom out and highlight some key concepts. First, ressentiment. That simmering resentment felt by the powerless toward the powerful. It's the driving force behind slave morality and explains why oppressed groups often glorify weakness while vilifying strength. Second, the will to power. As I mentioned earlier, this is Nietzsche's alternative to traditional notions of morality. Life isn't about following rules or seeking happiness. It's about overcoming challenges and becoming who you are. Third, Nietzsche's call for a revaluation of values. He wants us to question everything we've been taught about good and evil. Are these ideas really serving us, or are they relics of outdated power dynamics? Which brings me to his critique of traditional morality. Nietzsche despises what he calls herd morality, the kind promoted by religions and philosophies that prioritize conformity, equality, and pity. He argues that this morality stifles individual greatness, rewarding mediocrity and punishing ambition. For Nietzsche, true morality should affirm life, not deny it. So why does any of this matter today? Well, Nietzsche's insights are still incredibly relevant. Think about cancel culture, victimhood politics, or debates around guilt and privilege. Many of these issues echo the same themes Nietzsche explored over a century ago: power, resentment, and the struggle to define what's moral. But Nietzsche isn't just a critic, he's also a provocateur. His ultimate goal is to inspire us to create new values, ones that celebrate strength, creativity, and authenticity. He calls this process becoming the Übermensch, or overman, someone who transcends herd morality and lives according to their own standards. Of course, Nietzsche's ideas aren't without controversy. Some accuse him of elitism or nihilism, while others see him as a prophet of existentialism. Love him or hate him, though there's no denying his impact on philosophy, literature, and culture. Before we wrap up, I'll leave you with one of Nietzsche's most famous quotes. "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Whether you agree with him or not, Nietzsche challenges us to find our own why, to question the status quo and forge our own path. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, And remember, the unexamined life isn't worth living.